Hello friends, welcome to Tarun IS. Today we will be discussing editorials from the Hindu and the Indian Express. However, I have taken this editorial from the Business Standard and the date is 12th of November 2022. So let's see what the editorial is. Basically, the article is about the regional rural banks and its declining importance, or you can say the significance, that how the significance and the relevance of the regional rural banks is declining. You can relate it with your general studies paper 3, that is Indian economy, resource mobilization, etc. etc. And the source is the business standard, which I have already mentioned. Now, before we talk about the article and what does the article says, let us first to have a brief review of the regional rural banks and when we understand what these RRBs or regional rural banks are. The regional rural banks, they were established in the year 1975 under the provisions of the ordinance that was promulgated on 26th of September 1975, and Regional Rural Bank Act was passed in the year 1976. So basically, ordinance is nothing but it's an instrument of law. It's an instrument of law having the same force as that of the law passed by the Parliament of India, and the governor can pass the ordinance under the Article 213 and the President can pass the ordinance under Article 123 of the Indian Constitution. So basically, the regional rural banks, they are the financial institutions which ensures the adequate credit availability for agriculture and other rural sectors. They combine the characteristics of the cooperative because they are established in the rural banks and they have a better understanding they have a better understanding of the rural problems. So basically, the share of the regional rural banks is it is sponsored by banks. For example, the SBI can also sponsor a regional rural bank. Then certain share or amount is given by the state government and maximum of the amount is given by the government of India. So basically, there are three parties that have the shareholdings in the regional rural banks, or which are that promotes the RRBs. So it was a working group that was headed by the Narasimhan, and he recommended the working group had recommended establishing the banks to enhance the financial inclusion in India, and regional rural banks would best suit to increase the reach or the penetration of the banks in the rural country, in the rural India. So now let us have a brief of the functions of the regional rural banks. So basic functions of the regional rural banks are to enhance the safety to the savings of the customers, to increase the credit supply to the rural areas, to increase the public confidence in the financial system, mobilize the saving of the public, and increase its network so as to reach all customers throughout India, to the rural areas, and bring in financial inclusion and social equity. Now let us talk about the declining relevance of the regional rural banks. So you see, several of the RRBs, according to the writer, they are now facing an existential crisis due to the dwindling business and soaring bad assets. That means there are NPAs in the banks. So when we speak of the twin balance sheet problem means that there are NPAs, non-performing assets, in the banks, that is public sector banks, as well as the corporates. So this is what is known as the twin balance sheet. We have one more problem which is known as the four balance sheet problem, and in the comment section you are going to tell me that what is this four balance sheet problem and NPAs are counted in which all sector when it comes to the four balance sheet problems. So several of the banks they have this dwindling business. One possible reason could be the increasing digitalization, because people are now not depending upon the conventional banks, and they are fast moving towards these Paytm banks or payment banks. Consumers are fast moving towards the payment banks. And if we consider the scenario of India, then in India there is a huge transfer of the money. However, there is more money by volume and not by value. So therefore the people who use the digital transaction fall in the middle and the lower middle income group or the lower income group classes. Therefore the transfer done by these people, they are high in volume but it is low in value. Thus this could be one of the possible reasons why there is a dwindling business with the regional rural banks. Also, migration could also be one reason, that people migrate from the rural areas and they come to city and therefore they open their account in the city banks. So this could also be another reason. Migration could be reason, and etc etc. The third possible reason could be that the regional rural banks do not offer incentives or innovative products to the customers. So I am only counting the problems, I mean the reasons for which the regional rural banks they are facing the existential crisis. So the writers says that RRBs, which were set up of course in the mid 1970s, we did saw that after the recommendation of the working group headed by the Narasimham, to provide the financial services to the agriculture workers and the laborers, but many of them either have collapsed or they got merged with their parent banks. That many of the regional rural banks have been merged with the sponsored bank. The parent bank means the bank who sponsored the establishment of the RRB, or they have collapsed. The overall business of the rural financial system, it has generally gone up in the last decade, but the performance of the RRB has not gone up. The number of RRB has been nearly halved. There was a time when the number of RRBs started to gradually increase. However, today the number of RRBs had declined from 82 to 43. That means almost 50% decline can be seen. The RRBs basically, they have the non-performing assets which have more than doubled from 2.05% to 4.68%. So they have non-performing assets. What is this non-performing asset? For any loan that has been taken by the bank taken from the bank by a person, if the principal plus interest is not paid for the 90 days, the loan or the assets of the bank because loan is shown as the asset in the balance sheet of the bank. So therefore this asset becomes non-performing as it is not generating income for the bank in the form of the interest. Therefore it is counted as the non-performing assets. The writer says that the non-performing asset has doubled when it comes to the RRBs from 2.05% to 4.68%. The volume of the credit dispersed by the RRBs on the other hand has also shrunk from 13% to 11%. So the credit disbursement has increased, the number has declined, non-performing asset has increased. But the writer says the share of the commercial bank in the agriculture loan has increased from 65% to 76% in the previous financial year, that is 2021 to 2022. So therefore these are certain reasons by which the writer can say that RRBs, they face the existential crisis. So merged some standalone RRBs with the larger unit to cut their overhead cost and scale up the business volume. So this is the step. Now we are discussing the steps which the government has taken. So merging is the one step. So if I count the steps like this, so merging of the RRBs with the parent bank or with each other, it is one of the steps taken by the government of India. The government has also tried to expand the capital base of the RRBs, and over 4,000 crore has also been provided towards the recapitalization of the RRBs in the last fiscal year. The RRBs, they have left primarily with the government sponsored business of servicing of official schemes involving the direct benefit transfer. So the point is, why there is a growing irrelevance of the RRBs? Basically, the RRBs, they have been left primarily with the government sponsored business of servicing the official schemes involving direct benefit transfer. So DBT basically DBT is the only performance that RRBs are doing right now. So the because the Indian public expenditure in the social welfare scheme has been increasing these days, thus the RRBs, they have to perform this task of dispersing the credit or the welfare or subsidy or DBT by the government of India. So why there is a growing irrelevance of the RRBs? First, RRBs, they have limited business activity now. Their operational costs are soaring. There is a lack of internet banking facilities in RRB. Some of the RRBs, which even today they have not fully digitalized their operation. However, with the current pace of digitalization in India, the RRBs have to keep pace with the other banks so as to generate income, decrease its operational cost, and enhance the business activity. Many of the RRBs, they have not expanded their business operation beyond the farm related activities. For example, RRBs mostly lend for the agriculture purpose. However, the RRBs should venture into giving grant or loan to the MSMEs. So that can also be one way to increase the effectiveness of the RRB. And also this is the reason why RRBs are facing existential crisis, or their activity is declining. So most people in rural areas, they prefer to deal with the commercial banks. Like I said, the people migrate from rural area and they come to the city and they open their bank account in the scheduled commercial banks such as SBI, Kotak this Canara Bank, which is Canara Syndicate Bank now. So these are the reasons why the writer points and says about the declining nature of the RRBs. Further, most of the RRBs, they become ineligible for being listed on the stock. So RRBs cannot be listed on the stock exchange because they do not meet the requirement, or they do not meet the preconditions set for listing in the stock exchange. This is because the RRBs, they need to have earned an operational profit of over rupees 15 crore in 3 out of the previous 5 financial years. Besides, they should have a net worth of rupees 300 crore and a capital adequacy ratio of above 9% according to the Basel norms 3 to qualify for listing on the stock exchange. So basically, if an entity has to be listed on the stock exchange, these are the certain conditions which needs to be fulfilled. However, the regional rural banks do not fulfill these prerequisites so as to be listed on the stock exchange. Therefore, best recourse for the RRBs is to either merge with their sponsored or the parent bank, or they should close down. So there is a very little space to survive as a standalone financial enterprises, considering that there are many innovative products that are coming in the market. For example, there are digital banks which have the completely online presence. Then there are payment banks, for example, the Airtel Payment Bank, the Amazon Pay, etc., which are directly linked with the bank account. And thus a person does not need frequent visit to the bank. The person does not need frequent understanding of the various schemes and etc. by the bank. And these payment gateways such as Paytm and Google Pay, Amazon Pay, etc., have enhanced the penetration of the digital payment system in India, and they have also made it easier for a person to pay via internet. The online banking has become very significant, and as well as it has become easier. And with the Prime Minister Digital Saksharta Abhiyan, the pace of digitalization and the internet penetration is increasing in our country, and thus the usage of the digital way of payment. Therefore, the regional rural banks are showing decline, and thus there is a very little space for them to survive. Thus, so I hope you've understood this article. We discussed the regional rural banks, and hopefully, if a question about the financial inclusion comes, you can include some of the point from this article. Thank you so much for watching Tarun IAS. Have a nice day.